Good afternoon, and I want to welcome you to this week's episode of the CVC Home Service Success Network. And joining us today is going to be my friend Bob Precinct, who is the Education Director. Excuse me, big time. Bob Ferrari. I don't know how I just did that, Bob. My apologies. But anyway, Bob Ferrari will be joining us today. And what we're going to be talking about is the evolution of training in the chimney and fireplace industry and where we're at today and what we're going into in the future. Now, first of all, let's take a little short summary. Let's run through what the history's been like. When I got in this business 40 some years ago, there wasn't a whole lot of training. Maybe every once in a while we would get together with some friends, maybe a state guild meeting. There was a national guild convention, but that was basically what the training was. But it started to evolve over the years. And National Chimney Sweep Guild was kind of the forefront of this because they were putting on certification seminars around the country. First two instructors were Jim Brewer and Dave Johnson. They went around the country presenting a 2-day preparation to take the NCSG certification, which was the predecessor of the CSI certification. There was also a lot of other people back in those days. Pete Luter was doing a touring show that was called, so it was a sweeps weekend that he, Brenda Sanders, and Cindy Tomaine from Thomasville, North Carolina, they went around the country presenting seminars. In fact, Pete used to take a piece of Venenox with him and burn it till that thing finally fell apart because he had had so many chimney fires in it. But as things went on, there was two guys in the industry. Their names were Victor M. Garden and Pete Luter. They went to an expo meeting and they came back with this crazy idea of building a training center, which became a reality in Indianapolis, Indiana. And training continued to evolve over the years. I can remember about 15 years ago, Bob, that Olympia Chimney had me come to Scranton, Pennsylvania, and had a meeting with their company leadership. And what they wanted to know was, they said, Jerry, what does Olympia do to move to the forefront? And I said, it's real simple. Copy what Bob Daniels did years ago. So what Bob Daniels had done, he did training with August West. They had their dog and pony show, as Bob used to tell me it was, that they traveled the industry. August West was putting on seminars, and it's continued to evolve into what it is today. CSI was deeded over the certification program and became the educational arm for the National Chimney Sweep Guild. They worked closely together in this for a number of years until they had what we call a divorce and have gone their separate ways. What's also happened is we've seen the advent of virtual training, where we have recorded sessions up online. NFI has an online platform. We have one here at CVC Success Group, and I'll mention another one, which is Surefire. So there's been virtual training. Then when COVID hit, what we started doing at CVC and others did also, we started doing virtual live seminars from our studio here in Concord, North Carolina, and other people were also doing the same. And that's kind of where it has turned in up to this point in 2023. We have Copperfield that is touring the country, putting on a massive set of seminars, doing great information, got great instructors out there. So what it's been up to this point, there's been all kinds of choices. And my buddy Bob here came up with something, and he made a presentation last week in Orlando, and it was all about the National Chimney Sweeps Guild says yes to all education. All education is good. The source, no matter what the source is. And that's where the National Chimney Sweep Guild, I feel like, has opened up the doorway for a lot of things to happen. But at Orlando last week, they introduced something entirely new, which is one of these things. And I'm going to put it on. And this is a virtual reality headset that now we're going to be doing training in. And I'm going to let Bob talk about this in a minute, because in an immersive style where actually you're going to be able to be trained on numerous things using virtual reality in your present day. Now, I bought a headset, brought home with me to be honest with you, there is a learning curve to this. Cheryl can kind of explain that because her and Bob were talking. I had a trip this week, so I left here on Tuesday morning, and I left these goggles with Cheryl, and I said, "Hey, while I'm gone this week, you may get bored, so hey, you can play with these things, see if you can make it work." So, she's still got a full head of hair out there, but she come back, she asked me the question, do these things survive a drop or a kick or a foot off the wall? Just how durable these things. And I knew at that point she'd been pretty frustrated. So, Bob, let's talk about this. What's the potential here? What are we doing? Because I know that the NCSG, this couldn't have been a small investment. They have had to invest heavily into building what we're seeing here. So tell us about this. Where did this idea come from, and where's it going to go to, Bob?
All right, let me address Cheryl's thing first, though. Is that it's usually men who don't read directions, but
I didn't have it.
a manly woman. And so those of you who got headsets and are trying to figure them out, because a lot of us have never been in one before, the new instructions is you go to YouTube and you make the query, and there's all kinds of videos that show you how to use the thing. And they're really helpful, really, really are. And there is a learning curve, that's for sure. So when the NCSG hired me, I said, I am not interested in doing what's already out there and being done. I don't see any point in it. It's done well. There's all of these programs. And it'd be boring. And so for me, if I get bored, I'm not that fun to be around. So, and I said, the future as I see it is moving into virtual reality. And of course, nobody really knew what that was on the board or anywhere else. And so they said, well, okay, yeah, go for it. But when I watch my grandchildren, and my oldest granddaughter is 29, and then they go down from there, they relax by putting on these headsets and playing games and interacting and talking with their cousins and friends who are in different states. And the whole point for bringing this in wasn't to have something that's new and cool. It was to solve problems with the way education's delivered. And so the problems that I was looking at is it's really expensive to send somebody to get trained someplace, even if it's relatively local. If you have to just drive to it, spend the night, a lot of us paid our guys if they're going to spend a day being trained, and that's expensive, travel. Second, they're not home working, or if you're a small business and you're the guy out in the truck and you're not there working, you're missing job opportunities, and that's affecting your revenues. And third is retention. I've had guys come back from what I knew were really good trainings, and they did not get out of it what I thought they were going to get. And so there was a retention problem that all could be addressed within virtual reality. So, and the reason that it does, one, we can take training into your own home or shop. We can build you a training center that has all the things can be taught, and you can fit it into whatever time slot's available, just like you can, with other virtual avenues. Were you going to say something, Jerry?
No.
Okay. So those were the problems that I was looking at solving. And if we could take that out, it makes training much more easy. The retention side of it works with the way our brains work. If any of you have ever watched a movie a second time and you get all this stuff out of it that you didn't get the first time, you go, why? And it's because our brains work in a way that it grabs what seems most important to it first, and that's what it latches onto and retains. Well, what a novice thinks is important is going to be very different from what an experienced person is. So they're going through the movie, so to speak, the training for the first time, and they're getting the plot, and they're getting the actors, and they're getting the flow of it and all of that stuff. You go to it the second time and you get all this new stuff out of it that you didn't even think was there before. And so VR allows us to work with that aspect of our brains. You can do it over and over. Traveling to a place over and over and going to the same class over and over is immensely impractical. So VR allows us to do that. And we want to build mind and muscle memory as far as processes, how you approach a job, how you approach sales, how you approach an inspection. We can build that into somebody and they can go through it until they get it. So where typical Zoom type of meetings have an average rate, and it all depends on who's presenting and how experienced the audience is, but as low as 10%. And they're measuring this off the whole COVID time when they put all the students in these classes like that. Because you can sit there and you've taught and seen people looking at their phone down under the table while you're talking. And that's what we do. We surf and we wait for the key words to come by and write them down, but the retention is fairly low. They can go through it again and again until they get it, but that's also difficult to do. So those were problems we wanted to solve. And in VR, even a classroom, let me say this, for a classroom, the measured retention is only about 40% in general. And again, depending on who's teaching and who the students are. And in VR, it's upwards of 70%. Because of the immersion, you can't surf on your phone when you got that headset on. Okay. You're in it.
Bob, explain the word immersion. A lot of people may not know what you mean when you say immersion.
Okay, when you put that headset on, you leave this world and all the things that you can see, and you are transported into what to your brain is an entire new reality. I mean, there are mountains and flowers and a world there. You're in a house, you're looking at chimney things. You can pick things up, put them down, move them around. You can actually build things and in virtual reality. And so you're completely absorbed into that world. You can leave it. You can push a button and you can leave. If you're in a classroom, a virtual classroom, and there's an instructor talking and you leave, well, they know you just disappear right out of there. And there's a learning management system that's still coming. We're building it in, but it tracks everybody, where they are, where they stopped, where they left. So there's a little more accountability built into the virtual reality systems.
Gotcha.
And we can't really, to somebody who hasn't put a headset on, you can't really describe how immersive it is. I was just telling Cheryl, you can go to a concert in there and walk around the guitarist on the stage. You go to an NBA game and those giants that play that game, you're looking at their legs and walking around right there. You're just very upfront and close with the environment. You can travel around the world. You can watch Netflix or other things. It's not just that on a huge screen. It opens up with a massive computer screen that you can adjust and tilt and move how you want it. You can also see through it in what's called mixed reality or augmented reality. For training, at least right now at this moment, I think virtual reality, which is completely immersed where you can't see any of this world, is the ticket. It's the way to go. But augmented reality and mixed reality, where you're seeing what's on the headset and you're seeing the room around you at the same time, is going to become more and more popular. That's in self-driving cars and all of that sort of thing.
Yeah. Didn't you tell me when we had a conversation the other week that this is so real that actually, like in a safety training, when people fell, that you actually felt pain, those type of things? It was that real, Bob?
Well, yeah. So we're still building the ladder safety class. When people fell off the ladder, they'd fall on the floor and they'd hurt themselves, or they'd have trauma in their mind because you jump. In the demo that we were showing at the show in Orlando, we could tell when somebody was suddenly teleported to the roof because they're standing on the floor and all of a sudden they go, oh, because you're suddenly on this roof and you're looking 2 stories down and it's steep, and you're like, I know I'm standing on a floor in a big auditorium, but I'm on this roof, and everything in you responds to that. It really is real.
So Cheryl, from everything Bob said, what kind of questions would you ask him about this? You're into the electronic world, you're into computers, you're in all that. What comes to your mind as we're talking about this?
Well, I mean, it's taken it to a whole new realm. We're seeing it in a lot of other places, but especially not in the technician world at this time, not as much. But it puts you, I just no more than I can make it work. We're going to qualify that thing. I could, I could see where things were real. And I mean, even when I would move my hands in there, I could see my hand just as I'm looking at it now. And it gives you an eerie feeling with a lot of control, if that makes any sense. Um, it's it's more real than you can even imagine it's going to be, even in that other mode where you can see outside of it, Bob, because I found that button by mistake. And so I'm almost like I'm between two worlds, if that makes if you understand what I'm saying. And it was a controlled, uncontrollable situation. I knew I had control. I knew I could yank the headset off, but my mind was still mixed within these worlds. And it's quite amazing. I mean, my suggestion, and Bob may tell me I'm wrong, is to begin sitting down till you can get your feet under you and feel. I mean, you couldn't at the show, but if you happen to get one of these at home, I suggest you sit down for a few minutes just so your brain can catch up with your body.
Yeah, and it's good to sit down and start. And a lot of people did, even at the show, they sat down and did that. I did that first at my desk and just sat here and started figuring out where things are, because when you're in it, it's not like looking at a screen in front of you. It's 360 degrees in a sphere. You can look up at the sky or the ceiling, you're looking down, and behind you there's a fireplace, and no matter where you turn, this world is completely enveloping you. So it's not even like just watching a film in a theater.
Yeah.
It's you're
Um,
immersed.
did you? And maybe this is silly, and maybe it's a woman thing. Did you ever reach out like you could grab something?
Yes.
I mean, it was really weird. You'd reach, and then your hands would go through it.
Your hand goes through the screen unless you've set it for hand control.
Yeah.
There's controllers that you hold, and they become virtual hands. And in the VR that we're building right now, you use those, and they can be like laser beams, and you point it. But you can also type with your fingers on a keyboard in there. I'm a one finger typer, so it doesn't matter to me. But there you can. I mean, with the whole new Apple thing, you can set up an entire office in VR. And, when you're starting to think about the space it takes, I was one of the first in the industry to build an in-house training center. I had roofs, I had fireplaces, I built the things because I had Al Levy for a coach. And that's what he said. You need to build an in-house training center. And I did. Well, that takes up space. This doesn't. And we can do almost everything that we can do in the real world, we can do in virtual reality.
Yeah.
When you watch the kids, like we're a bunch of old people talking about this. None of us ever been in headsets. This generation, though, the Zers, as they're calling them now, who are coming into our workforce, this is their world. This is natural for them to move between virtual and normal realities. It's not even a surprise. They just do it naturally. They're already talking about the neuron paths that are growing in their brains that are different from ours, that grew up with books and things like that. And so there's a real shift that's taking place. And it's been my contention for a long time that some of the problems we have hiring is because we don't speak their language. I said it at a heat shield summit probably close to 10 years ago that I was going to go ahead and bash the millennials or the Zers back then, that all they want to do is play video games. They don't want to have to earn the grade. Just give them a good grade and that. But before we do, I said, every single popular video game that there is, you start at the bottom and you fail forward until you reach the goal. And that's the language of success. And they have it in their culture, and we didn't know how to speak it. So I feel that we need to bridge into that. I still have the question of why we have job applications I could have filled out in 1969.
Yeah. So Bob, when you decided that this was the way to go and the board endorsed your concept, they said, okay, Bob, go for it. What was your process to locate the subject matter expertise to put this together? Because no offense, Bob, I know building this system, that's not me, and that's not me, and that's not you. So you had to have, how did you go about finding the right people to assist NCSG in this?
Well, it was somewhat serendipitous. So I started calling people who were kind of computery ones and just asking, how do you do this? Where do you start? And one of them was Spark Marketer, and those guys knew a guy in Texas, and a guy named Mike Ribble. So I called him, and he works as an artist, kind of freelance for different companies. And he had a couple of companies that he worked with, and we were going to talk to them, and they wouldn't talk to us. This was in June, and it went on, and they had all these deadlines because this is exploding. It is happening everywhere. Lots of big industries are in it, and they didn't have time. They didn't have time to talk to us, and ultimately they didn't, and they wouldn't. And he went to some sort of convention in Houston, down where he lives, that's all about all of this kind of stuff. And this wasn't From the Future wasn't even a company that was on his radar to meet there. He met them at the very end, just as they were starting to clean up. And he got to talking, and so he helped them clean up, went out to dinner with them, and called me up and go, these guys are right up your alley. Their vision is to create a whole university for the trades. And this, now we're going into September. It was Labor Day weekend. And I go, well, he's meeting with them next week, but I don't want to put it in his hands. So I reached out to him from their website and just said, look, the chimney sweeps are the multi-tool of the trades. You can hardly think of a trade that we don't encompass somewhere in our workday. And I want to talk to you about building this for us. And they reached out to me on Labor Day weekend and set up an appointment with Mike Christian, who was in Orlando, their CEO and founder, on the Tuesday after Labor Day. And we met and took off from there.
So basically, this has been a project that you've worked on alone from the NCSG side, or have there been other people from the volunteer side that have been assisting you in this, Bob?
Nope, it's pretty much just been me. I've asked at various times for photos, for sometimes technical information, because regionally we're a little bit different in some things. So, but basically things have come out of my SOPs from my company when I had it. And we started with a masonry fireplace, which is the first module that we're building that we're hoping to finish by April 15th. That's the most complicated one. And once we finish that, the other modules will come pretty fast, a lot faster than this. This one, we had to build the whole world. So right. If you imagine you're shooting a movie or you're building a video game, and you have to create the world and the set that everything takes place in. And so you have artists who start things, and then you have engineers who start figuring out how they connect, and then programmers who make it all move together. And it's a whole series of processes that goes on. And I act as kind of the professional consultant for the topics.
Got you covered. So at this point, y'all have developed your first program, which is an inspection program at this point. So, kind of, let's tell everybody what kind of training is coming down the pike utilizing the immersive, in your words, virtual reality. What are we going to look at? I mean, are we talking about two or three more seminars or subject matters? Are we looking at dozens? What are we looking at here, Bob?
Well, think of how long does it take for you to take a technician before that tech sees everything in our chimney sweep world?
Years and years and years.
It's forever. And then to take what what I know from, say, the 80s or the late, I was welding stoves in 1977 up in the mountains here and copying other things. What about the development of stoves and those systems over, that last 50 years almost? A lot has happened. Can we transfer that knowledge? That's almost impossible, that transfer of knowledge, especially all of the years and what they're going to see in the field. So we can do that. We can transfer that knowledge in VR because we can build a chimney that has water damage, it has earthquake damage or settling damage or thermal damage, or all the different ways that mortar erodes. We can get it all in. We're talking about siloing it, so we're going to teach somebody, here's the things that happen when there's water damage. Here's the things that you're going to be looking for when there's thermal damage, everything from boiled creosote to certain kinds of cracks. Here's when it's an earthquake or earth movement. And then they take all of that knowledge and go over and actually do a full inspection of the fireplace and chimney with a camera, with an electronic clipboard that they're checking off, from the rain cover to the crown to the exterior, the interior, all the way down to the basement or foundation. And it's just like we do it. They take a picture, it goes in, and ultimately they'll be presenting it to an AI customer. And Cheryl's helping us with that, create personalities. So we're not always just submitting it to the same personality, but the various personalities that we run into in the field, we can replicate to the final thing. Eventually, what are we going to do about it? So there'll be repair work that needs to be done. So we've started with a masonry fireplace. That's the most complicated, has the most things. Then we'll have a masonry chimney that comes down to a thimble, and that will have a pipe that comes down to a freestanding wood stove. Everything's wood right now. Gas and other things are still to come. Then we'll have a factory-built fireplace with its chimney that goes up through a chase and up through the attic. There'll be a freestanding wood stove with a factory-built chimney, with a chimney that goes up just out the roof, no chase. So you'll inspect in the attic. There's going to be ways that you can drop a tape measure or a flashlight or step through the sheetrock, which almost all of us have had some terrible experiences with that. But the benefit in virtual reality is that it didn't actually damage anything, but it put it into our head to be careful in this way, moving through this environment. If anybody's ever watched, what's the name of that movie? The race car one. I keep forgetting it for some reason, but it's on Netflix. It's
you're talking about is it Pixar stuff that you're talking about?
No, I'm talking, it's it'll come to me. Anyway, these kids this movie was made in 2012, and this happened, I think, around 2009. So we're talking the Stone Age in virtual reality. And there's a kid who's a gamer, and they were playing, there's 80,000 kids around the world playing this car race game. They're racing Le Mans and racing different tracks or road races around the world. And a guy went to Nissan and said, hey, there's 80,000 car enthusiasts there. We can reach them. Let's have a contest. And they made a contest where the top racers ended up getting to go to a real race school and race these cars, only real cars. Well, one of them won. He got his license, and the whole story goes that nobody liked him, right? He's a computer kid. He didn't know how to drive real cars. He only knew how to drive in the computer world. And in the end, they put together a team of these kids who learned that way, and they podiumed at Le Mans, which is really, really high. And it changed the entire auto racing industry, because when you're practicing and you crash one of those cars, how much does that cost? $1 million? 2 million? And they could crash them and learn in VR, and nobody was hurt and no car was damaged. And they became top professional racers.
Was this movie the movie Cars?
No,
It wasn't. Okay.
it's Gran Turismo. Thank you.
Okay.
Gran Turismo.
Gotcha.
It changed the whole auto racing industry. They
Yeah.
all are doing it that way since then.
Well,
And
you know,
so
if you
surgeons are doing surgeries in VR. That's where they're
Yeah.
learning, rather than on your body.
Yeah. And you know, Bob, when you talk about this, when you look at the NASCAR series, one of the leading stars right now came out of his training using virtual reality to train. Never drove smaller circuits. And his name's William Byron, and he drives for Hendrick Motorsports. And that's how he learned, because that's what these race car drivers, they're in simulators now. And this
Yes.
is that's what you're doing, a simulator. They sit into it and the racetrack, because now they've changed the rules where the drivers can't go practice at the track. So they're using simulators, just
So
like in the air.
that's the exact correct word. We're doing simulation.
Right. If you look at it, it's like the movie Miracle on the Hudson. And when they came and they used the simulators to simulate what the pilots did to come up with, they call them sims. That's the abbreviation for it. But basically, that's what we're doing here, because that's how airline pilots are trained. They're trained in simulators.
And they've
Same
been
way.
trained for 30 years that way. The military has been using it for decades.
Yeah.
The kids have been using it. It's just new to us and to the trades. It's not necessarily new, but it is rapidly developing and expanding. The whole AI and everything has blown it wide open.
Okay, so Cheryl, I've got the goggles. I left the hand controls up there. Would you hold the hand controls up and kind of show people? I think there's some buttons on there, Bob. So hold the buttons towards the camera. And Bob, you kind of tell us, what are the buttons on there for? Is there 3 of them, Cheryl?
There's 3 and an off and on spot.
So there's two
I do
triggers.
one. They both
There's
just
two
alike.
triggers. One's on the side and one's in front. And the one that's in front is what you usually do to use as your finger to push the buttons to open an app or do anything else you want.
Okay.
The one on the side is used to grab something. So like in our demo, in our simulation, you can grab a flue liner and lift it out and look inside of it. And it's weird because it doesn't weigh anything, but you can pick it up and look at it. And you use the buttons for that. It depends on the app what the other buttons are. The Meta button, the one that has the thing that's the Meta symbol, sort of like a infinity sign, that one gets you in and out. If you want to quit an app and get out of it, you hold that down.
Okay.
And the other ones are just for different apps, use them for different things.
Okay. So do those controllers connect to this with wires, or
No.
they are basically freestanding and transferring the information?
It's all wireless.
Okay, so it's wireless. Because Cheryl, hold up where you see the wires, the short wires coming out.
Not wires. These are handles.
They hold them on your hands because, like this morning, I'm experimenting, and there's a thing I got called Supernatural, which is a workout that you can do in VR. And basically, you're hitting all of these stuffs. There's a boxing one, and those can fly out of your hands. So they have it so that it can strap on.
Yeah. So, Cheryl, as Bob's talking, is there any questions coming up in your mind about this? I'm going to call it training simulators, Bob. immersion training. There's all kinds of names could be used, but for some reason, that simulator term is really hanging in my head right now.
It's a simulation.
Yeah. So, Cheryl, what about you? You got any questions on this?
Okay. I'm a medical freak. I like knowledge. So if I'm understanding this right, it has caused the young people's neurons to change in their brain. So I'm assuming that it's going to do the same thing in adults at a much slower rate, but it's going to change it up if we use it enough. This could be medically improving to some things I'm looking at. Yes, no, or am I off the ballpark?
From the future, the company we're working with to build this actually is building things and working with autistic children. And they're going in and they're interacting. They interact with AI, which helps them then translate that into working with real people where they have problems with that. We haven't even begun to explore what the possibilities are with the technology. It's just beginning. And we're, for once, as an industry, right at the front edge of it rather than 20 years behind.
And Bob, we had a speaker at the convention. I forget what the keynote speaker's name was, but he was talking about AI. And AI is not something new. He went back where AI was actually used in World War II. And Cheryl can kind of verify this because she went to computer school in '69. And she had often told me that the smartphones that we have more memory than the mainframe computers that she was working on in '69. That we have more information in these smartphones. When you look at it, in my computer, I've got a little plug-in hard drive. Bob, this thing is like this big around. And Cheryl, how much information will that thing hold?
I think that one's got about 80 gigs on it, just that
80.
one.
Yeah, and like I said, it's almost like a little button. But we would have never imagined this kind of information years ago. Lord, I remember when smartphones come out, we have bag phones that were like little suitcases, all
And
this kind of stuff.
The scary thing, that was Tom Edwards was our speaker. He's a futurist, works with these mega corporations all over. He had the slide with the implant. To where now suddenly you're starting to talk that you're part silicone, part biological, and that's going to freak everybody out. It's going to be 666 all over again. But there's this merging of these worlds. The easiest way to look at it is as they're developing, and they haven't figured it all out yet, the self-driving cars. It's sensing all of these things in the real world. You're going to see it on a screen. We've gotten used with cell phones to watch people walk around hands-free and talk to things that aren't there. With headsets, once those become eyeglasses, which is very short, they may become contact lenses. We're going to have people seeing things that aren't there.
Yeah.
And we won't get used to it. But you tell me, and Cheryl, maybe you can confirm, the generations that are coming into our workforce now really aren't readers. That's not how they're gathering their information.
That a lot of times when I'm interviewing people, the younger people, I'm not going to say they don't know how to read, but that's not one of their specialties. They have the knowledge to read the tape measure and things, but to sit down and read a book, I'm talking to a lot of people that have never read a book.
Yeah.
And it's unreal, but I want to back up and revisit something. The week right after I got back from convention, Jerry was talking, or y'all were talking about the implant. They have actually now they have a paraplegic that they had put an implant in his brain. He was a chess star or something prior to getting hurt, and now he has nothing from the neck down. But they had this in his eye, and he could play chess. And it was not, I say his eye, it was in his brain. He could just think it and make the things move. Yeah. That's a little futuristic, but that's what's coming, and people might as well get used to it. That's where we're headed.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, there's all conspiracy theories and whatever aside that's bound to sweep over everything. the technology's here, and for us in the chimney industry, we can embrace it and really speed up the process of transferring that knowledge. We can get somebody trained where they show up on a job and they know what a liner is. They know how it ought to be installed. They know what they should be looking for in an attic. They've been in an attic. And just like the kids who drove the cars and learned to race and understood the course, the same thing for us. They're going to understand the systems that they're looking at, and we can progress much faster. It's not new information. It's just the way that we deliver it goes into them. They can retain it and they can use it more immediately, and that helps all of us.
Well, Bob, so you'll know, this was the first headset sold in Orlando, because at the end of his presentation with you, I went up to him and I said, hey, how many you got with you? He said he had brought like 15 or 20. I said, I want one. So go ahead, please. I'm taking one right now. So I think that I bought the first one in Orlando last week. But if people want this, if they want to get into that, how do they get access to this? We're not at convention. So where do they go if they want to add this into their arsenal of tools?
Well, you can buy a headset that's a Meta 3. That's the latest Meta headset that came out. It's $499 for the 128 gigabyte one. I think it's $650, another $150 if you want 500 gigabytes. They said that we didn't need it for what we're doing, but in 1988 they said my 40 megabyte computer would be all I'd ever need. So yeah. You may want more than that. I can put you in, you can email me education@ncsg.org, and I can put you in contact with Justin. We've sold them as a kit, and they're going to be available for a little bit longer. They come with a case. They come with the extra battery pack because the regular battery doesn't last that long, and a little bit modified headpiece for it. So you get all of that, and it has the app already in it and loaded in. Or you can just go buy one for $500, start playing around in it, and when you're ready, you can say, I want to buy it, and we're with from the future. We're letting them do the technology. We don't want to have to explain to everybody why their headset doesn't work or things like that. We'll get lost and won't be much help, but they do that and can do that, and they have the personnel to.
So basically the NCSG is not selling this. This is sold by From the Future, and they hook you up. I think the monthly fee for the NCSG is $77 a month. Am I correct on that?
Yeah, so it will be. It's not yet. It'll be after another month. Then it's going to be $77 a month as we're rolling out the next 7 modules.
Okay.
And then that'll also include man lifts, because Genie's letting us license their man lift, and ladder safety. Eventually, they're working on a first aid one. And of course, once we get past, we'll have house pressure in it, where the tech's actually in the house doing all the measuring and finding the different problems.
Okay, so I got kind of a crazy question. We all know that people are crazy about CEUs for their recertification. So is there going to be an ability for CEUs with these programs that you're developing, Bob?
Yes, we're trying to figure out what the merger is. I mean, it takes time to go through it. And so what segments are we going to break it into? Obviously, an inspection program, you still have to use physical time to go through it. So that doesn't change. If it takes an hour, it takes an hour in VR, more or less. And so there will be CEUs, and there's a learning management system that goes with it that tracks each licensee. Right now, it's going out to the company for beta, so we can get feedback. How's it working? What else do we need? All of that kind of stuff. But once that ends in about a month or so, then each individual has to have a license. That's not necessarily $77 a month. We're making this up as we go along. I really want to emphasize that. I don't know anything about computers, and I think it's cool. I'm best in that kind of a space where nobody's sure what to do. But we got looking at it, figuring out what should it cost, how should it work, what's going to make it the best for the industry, because the NCSG's mission is not even our members support the entire industry. So what's good for everybody? How can we get it out there and make it usable? And we're getting that feedback. The 77 just was made up. It came from NCSG started in 1977, and we're coming up on a 50-year anniversary. That's how random that was.
There you go, man. You know, funny thing, I can remember presiding over the 25th anniversary, Bob. Okay.
Yeah. In Indianapolis.
Yeah. So anyway, but that's, it is amazing how far we come. So Cheryl, any additional questions from you for Bob today while we're on here?
No, I am just, you know me well enough to know I'm getting really excited about this. Once I get past and master that little white thing, I'm extremely, for a 72-year-old woman to be this excited. I can only imagine what it must be like for these young kids.
Yeah. And also, before we end this episode, I want to encourage you. My friend Bob Ferrari made one heck of a presentation at NCSG and spoke some words that needed to be spoken and were very well received. You can go on the National Chimney Sweep Guild Facebook page, Bob, I believe, and that speech is up at this point. But he talked about where we've been, where we're going, and it all rolled out to that all education is good. And the NCSG, the National Chimney Sweep Guild, it's open to all providers. And from that point, but go listen to that, Bob, because I want to compliment you in front of this group. You had some very well-phrased thoughts into that. And I think it was actually saying things that a lot of people wanted to say. They didn't want to be the person to stand up and say it. So as a person that's been involved in this industry for many, many, many years, and it put a lot of time, a lot of effort, a lot of dollars, a lot of blood, sweat, and tears, I want to thank you for the message you did that day, okay?
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Well, listen, folks, if you've tuned into us today, hey, we've given you a look into the future, which the future is now what we're moving into. You can get into this. It's another tool. Is it going to replace your classroom training? No. Is it going to replace your hands-on training? No. Is it an additional way to add knowledge and a quicker way to your people? Is it a way to test your people, to test their skills? This, I think, is a monumental step into the future. I mean, I wanted to get one of these to see what the potential is here. And the more I look at this, the more I see that potential coming. So, Bob, hey, man, the people probably thought you was crazy when you came up with this idea. And, we both know each other are just a little bit crazy sometimes. But I think you had the right idea here, and I'm glad it's coming to fruition for you. And with that, we're going to end this week's. Go ahead, Bob. I'm sorry.
I'm just saying thanks.
Okay. So with that, we're going to end this week's episode of the CVC Home Service Success Network. That Cheryl, myself, Josh is missing today. We are here to help you turn your business dreams into your business realities. If you need help in your business, hey, reach out. I'm going to give one more thing to Bob. Bob reached out to some people like Jerry and Cheryl some years ago. Bob, you were one of the first people that hired a coach. Al Levy was one of them. Eleanor was the other. Was it a valuable investment that paid off for you?
I would do it all over again. Just do it. If you're thinking about it, just do it. It's the same as VR. It moves a transfer of knowledge, business knowledge to you much more quickly, organizes your business, and it was so valuable for me.
Oh, yeah. Al Levy is like a brother to me from another mother. We communicate very well, and we have such similar feelings. He and I learn from each other. Hey, and it's a great feeling. So anyway, appreciate you joining this week. Look forward to you next week on the next episode of the CVC Home Service Success Network. Let us know how we can